good evening, and welcome again to the Black and White Traffic Noise Show, otherwise known as What Now, with your host, it seems, a young Rasputin, because I really should have shaved before I started this, but it's too late now.
One day, Alexei, you will be powerful Tsar, subject to communist incursion.
Well, the weekly release schedule of this little writing vlog sort of got away from me, didn't it? Because it's been a little bit of a while since I did one of these, and what an eventful week it has been, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends and comrades all. Whole stretches of California are still on fire, the British government is coming apart at the seams, and it's hilarious, and France's President Macron is sweating under the knowledge that when French people say heads will roll, they tend to mean it. But of significantly greater socio-economical and whatever else importance is I've finished my essay. I have finished my university work for the year, which means I can go back to doing things like this and my own writing, and it's a jolly good time all round. This semester and its attendant essay boggled me like you would not believe. It was entirely to do with writers in social media and how they use it, and which is largely why this channel exists and my presence on the Facebook page exists, and it was completely out of my comfort zone. I don't think I'm an unintelligent person. I'm more than willing to acknowledge my own ignorance, but this was something I knew absolutely nothing about, and I still know next to nothing about it, but this channel seems to be working reasonably nicely. I keep getting regular subscribers and people commenting, which is very pleasant, but the important thing is that because I submitted the URL for this channel, and this will probably be the first video that pops up once it is searched for, in the time frame rather, it means that there is a reasonable chance that I've got my tutors and my marking tutors to go onto YouTube instead of doing work. See you in January. And of course, once all the academic gubbins is out of the way, all the stories and characters in the two books I mentioned, and scenes and themes and dialogue that have been roaming around the inside of my head like sort of incandescent polymorphic geometric shapes in the great swells of the psychic sea, that I can now finally piece together and get back to writing my own precious stories, and they're gone. They're gone. Completely gone. Like Kaiser Soze. They're away. It's rather like I've been away at a job which is, for weeks on end, trying to track down and catch a really greasy and temperamental pig. And now that I've finally caught it, and exhausted and tear-stained and cut and bruised and tear-stained, because that needs to be said twice, I've limped home. I've literally brought home the bacon, and I've kicked in the door, and I've been hoping that all my characters and my storylines would descend upon me, joyous at my return, and they throw their whatever stories have instead of arms around me. But no, what I've found instead is a note attached to the fridge with my least favourite fridge magnet that simply says, "I'm sorry, it's not working. You're just not present enough." But there is still AuthorTube. So, what I thought I'd do while I limp my way through this peculiar kind of writer's block and prep for next week's Christmas-themed video, which I'm rather looking forward to, and I hope you will join me for it, I thought I'd just drink some tea, sit here, and talk to you about something that I rather enjoy. Won't that be nice? As you've probably gleaned from the title of the video down there, what I want to talk about is writing longhand, of the old style of using pen and paper instead of writing straight into a word processor. In the last few days, a very, very dear friend of mine and fellow journeyman on this bizarre little road towards authordom informed me that I have now converted him to the cause of writing longhand, and he had always been a purely digital writer, so it's nice to know that I'm having some effect on people. But also, get back to work, Mr. Perry. That shop's not going to man itself. Get the hell off YouTube. In this day and age, where you can even write onto your phone, and there's voice to text technology, it seems easier than ever for people to just write, to just begin and go, and that's spectacular. And I've often wondered, or at least speculated, that the reason people of my generation and above, because below it's not really a thing, it wasn't taught in schools, the reluctance to write purely longhand is a sort of subconscious reaction to when we were at school, and teachers would, I don't know how it was for you, but certainly in my school, very, very cruel about the state of your handwriting. And my handwriting's appalling. It really is terrible chicken scratch. It's that bad that I've been mistaken for doctors. That's how awful my handwriting is. Only I can read it, but I would argue that in the first draft, the only person who needs to read it is me. And when I get going, my handwriting gets worse because the flow is coming up, and it's like it's just basic hydrodynamics. When the dam comes down, the pressure. This has nothing to do with my point whatsoever. So yes, I can sort of understand the reluctance of some people to want to write longhand, and writing straight into a computer, you can visualize what it would look like on the printed page. Chiefly because you can print that page. You can get it's immediate, it's right there, it looks like how it would be in a book. I sympathize entirely. But I can't do it. I cannot write, certainly I cannot write well, or in any honest or acceptable manner, straight into a word processor. I simply can't do it. And I think the reason is because of its impermanence. You can immediately backspace if something comes up wrong. You can, something which you really should never, ever do, which is edit in the moment, or even pre-edit. You can get your drafting all mixed up. There's nothing solid about writing on a word processor. It's not actually there. And I think, which is a thought I wanted to share with all of you, because I'm trying to convert you to the cause of writing longhand. There are certainly plenty of you who do anyway. But for those of you who don't, who write exclusively digitally, I'd like you to consider this. Pause for emphatic T-sip. Consider the difference. You open a Word document and you start to write your story. Once upon a time, all the way through to the end. What you can do is you can immediately start cutting. You can immediately start changing. You can move things around, you can delete entire characters, you can start from scratch, you can delete the whole thing and start again. You can put the end where Once Upon a Time was. You can do all of these things. Click save, and there it is. But it's one document. There is no tangible connection with what you've been doing. Follow me with this. If you write your first draft longhand, like I do, which is suffer terribly from carpal tunnel, and I'm not doing my bit for the rainforest, it must be said. Consider it with longhand. You write it, you put the ink to the paper, and it's staying there. So when you come back to it, as we all do, I think, you get your first draft, you leave it to one side for a little while, you come back, you read through it, you start your second draft. And what you can get from the longhand version is you can get the crossings out. You can get the word changes above it. You can see where you became excited writing. like if you use the very, very, very bottom of the page to scroll in the very last part, just so you don't lose the flow that is on the page. You can write upside down. You can write diagonally. You can make a tactile document that you can have an interaction with. But more importantly, you can have a one-way conversation and relationship with the writer you were when you started. You can have a much better idea of original intention. It's a much better anchor. And I mean, then there's the whole thing about the fact that you don't need to charge paper. Which, come on, we live in an age where a realistic conversation is, can I unplug your cigarette so I can charge my book? I've been using that joke for well over 2 years, and I can't remember where it came from. I think it's from an XKCD comic, but I really, really can't remember. Pause for potential plagiarism sip. Because it occurs to me that one thing I love, which is, this is a tangential note. I know, me going off on a tangent. Who knew? Is one thing I'm fascinated by is the actual production of books as a physical construct, the actual physical book. Do I have an example here? Yes, wait. Okay, this is a somewhat grandiose example, but it's a somewhat grandiose book. So, this is Folk Tales of the British Isles from the Folio Society. I can't remember when I got this, or indeed why I got this, but it is a startlingly beautiful book. It's got wood engraved illustrations, and sorry, I got complete. Can we have a look at this? Can we get that in there? Look at this. That's a quality of illustration you very seldom see these days. But yes, I'm intrigued by how. Look at it. So you see, this is a real obsession with me, of how books are put together, and the design of them, and the binding of them. I mean, I'm never going to write anything that comes in one of these, but then again, I'm never going to write a book as beautiful as this. They say don't judge a book by its cover, but the reader's relationship with a book is not tied purely to the content. We're not supposed to, but we do. We judge a book by how it feels. We have a tactile relationship with the book. And we expect that of readers. How many times? In fact, you know, I know the answer. I've never met you in my life. Maybe one day I will. Maybe one day we'll be grand old friends. But I've never met you, but I know this is true. Because this is AuthorTube. I've seen the videos. I know how this works. You have plenty of times gone into a bookshop. You've wandered around, and a particular spine has caught your eye. Amidst that smell of freshly cut paper and glue, and you've pulled it down, and you felt it in your hand. You do that thing where you flick through it. You can feel the freshness of the paper. You can almost smell the ink on it. You take in the whole thing. You feel it. You know it as a physical object. I know you do it because I do it as well. We all do it because we're readers. But why should writers not be expected to have that physical relationship with their work? I think that writing longhand, psychologically speaking, gives you a tremendous relationship with your piece. Because otherwise, you have to print off the whole damn thing before you can feel it in your hand. But the longhand version, in your own handwriting, terrible though it may be, is a living object. It is your imagination wrought into an almost living form. I think in the creative process, certainly in the initial stages, there is a proviso to this. I wouldn't recommend writing every single draft longhand because, frankly, you're just starting to waste paper after that. I do use word processors. I use them for my subsequent drafts. I mean, I do print them off and do my editing longhand, but I type up what comes next. I don't do the whole thing purely on paper. Good God, I'd never get anything written if I did that. But in that initial stage, in that your newborn text, before you begin to shape it into something to go out into the world onto its own 2 feet, I think there really is something to be said about having that tactile, physical, fingertip relationship with the work. You can know yourself as a writer by looking at how you started. Whereas if you were writing it straight into a word processor, you'd have deleted that. There is now no past writer. And the last thing on this exact point, but the last thing I want to say about it is, we're all familiar with the creator's curse. But for the 1 or 2 of you who may not be, you honour me by allowing me to be the one to explain this to you for the first time. The idea of the creator's curse is an explanation for why writers, musicians, actors, directors, arty people are never satisfied with their work, which is because they begin a project with a particular set of standards, and they go through the project, and by the time they finish that project, they have, like a muscle, they have become better at their work. So their standards have shifted. So it doesn't matter how much praise is poured upon you, and if you have praise poured upon you, please tell me what that's like. It would be a new and joyous experience for me. But it doesn't matter how nice people are or how applauding they are about it. Satisfaction will always just be out of your reach. If you're writing straight into a word processor and you're making these changes as you go along, and in the same document you don't have that history, you don't have that sense of where you've been. There are plenty of people I know who, when they finish one draft, they copy the file and use the copy as draft 2, so they can go back and compare. I understand that entirely, and it's a good practice. Certainly, I've used it myself, but it is. Good God, that was a bad one. I've tried digging up the roads and laying landmines, but somehow Liverpool City Council were furious with me. The hell was I saying? Maybe that's another reason why I like writing longhand. Tangents are easier. I can get distracted very easily, and I'm limited to what is on the page, whereas word processors do not allow you such limitations. You can just keep going forever and ever. My God, I've completely forgotten what I was saying. Help! Okay, copy, paste, second draft, yes, okay. All very well and good, supported entirely, saves a hell of a lot of time, but it is in terms of the writer's relationship to themselves, and because Lord knows writers need to know who they've been before they can work out who they are. I don't think any of us really know, and if we discover, the world will cave in. But with the copy-paste method, that is the difference between the shadow and the person. I really do think, and I'm trying to convince you, I've failed miserably, but Lord knows I needed a video for this week, that being able to go back and read the workings of your own physicality upon the world, literally carving your, and it's an ancient idea. The first humans, one of the oldest evidences of human life on Earth is the, I can't pronounce it, but the caves in France, the handprints on the wall, leaving marks on the physical world, is the oldest form of storytelling. This is our natural habitat. Writers need to work in this medium. I think paper and ink is the writer's natural habitat. For me, while having access to word processors are a useful tool, they're not a great habitat. It's like a fish should be in the ocean as opposed to the fish tank. Or, in my case, the whale shouldn't be in SeaWorld. Well, I've rambled on long enough without much of a plan of what I was going to do or say, which is apparently what I do, and you've watched to the very end, which is apparently what you do, because you must like the inane witterings of a complete stranger with a face of a kicked badger and a voice that always sounds like it's fomenting revolution. So, as a final thing, I know plenty of you do anyway, but for those of you who may be a purely digital writer, I really think it is worth a go of just writing longhand. If you're sat at the computer screen, especially when you've got writer's block, and there's that blinking little cursor waiting for you to add some impermanent words together, ink and paper won't judge you. A pen is not going to judge you. The computer judges you. It waits for you. It stares at you, much like this Dalek eyepiece is judging me right now, which spans on this sputum of language. Because I just feel compelled to say something so it all comes out at once. Computers are the same. Just quietly, calmly, get yourself comfortable, get yourself some suitably sultry lighting that makes you look considerably more attractive than you have any business being, and just mark the paper. It really, I find anyway, that it really works. I don't have much in the way of advice to give, but in those moments of not knowing what to do or how to begin, simply making those marks is a good enough grease for the cogs to get them going and blow off the cobwebs. Blow away the cobwebs, not blow off, because in England that means something rude. Once again, this has been a video where I have had absolutely no idea what I'm doing, but I've wanted to reacquaint myself with the whole AuthorTube thing because 1, I said I would, and 2, I quite enjoy it. I think I'm getting better. He lied. But I will have something for next week, which is going to be a Christmas-themed video, and I'm going to treat you all, or at least punish you all, because you're all being very nice to me. So, like everything in my life, if something is going well, I must destroy it. So I will punish you by reading something from my book in a slightly Dickensian attitude. So I will have a script for that, because it's actually written down, and I'll know what to say. But until then, as is my closer, liking, commenting, and subscribing is only going to encourage me. So do so at your own risk. I'm going to go to bed now. Good evening.